Hello, welcome to episode 2. Sorry it's out a bit late. I had some trouble planning this one. In future I should probably start making them before the end of the month that they're for, rather than afterwards. In February I painted a little bit less stuff than the month before, but I did get some decent work done on my ultramarines, so I'll start with them first. This is the Assault Intercessor Squad from Indomitus. Like the Eradicators last month, I basically just used Midwinter Minis' paint scheme, except I kind of put the paint on a bit thick during the early stages, so the Zenithal Prime doesn't really come through as well as it does on the Eradicators last month. It's a bit annoying, but I'll remember it for next time. Also, I'm quite pleased with the decals on these. The shoulder pads are a bit overly glossy because I varnished the shoulder pads before and after putting each decal on. But I am at some point going to get a matte varnish to try and dull them down a bit. Also, I think I did the dust on the legs a lot better than I did on the Eradicators. I stuck a lot closer to Midwinter Minis' like weathering technique, so I did the thing of using watered down base coloured paint to make it look like there was dust actually stuck in the cracks, rather than just on the edges, like dry brushing does. I think that with the dry brushing makes it look really good. Also, you'll notice I used base coloured rims for these guys. Before January I hadn't actually done that before, but now I really like how it looks. I've also done it on these guys. This is a guardsman and a tech priest engine seer for my Imperial Guard army. I was really pleased with these. For some reason a few weeks ago I just really decided I wanted to paint the engine seer who I'd had lying around for a while. So I did, and after that I did the guardsman as a test model for the rest of his squad. The engine seer is just meant to have a normal box art type of AdMech colour scheme, the Martian one, but the guardsman is in my own colour scheme, meant to represent a regiment from the Macragge system somewhere. I've kicked around a lot of ideas for what they might be specifically, Ultramar Auxilia or Macragge PDF or something like that, but my recent thinking is that I want them to be a travelling regiment that are just from the Macragge system, because I think having them as a planetary defense force seems kind of boring because they'd just be staying in one place. I was thinking they might be a regiment that's taking part in one of the Indomitus Crusade fleets to explain why their colour scheme is so ultramarine looking, but also to try and add a naval element to them because I think they kind of have that look to them. I like to imagine them working sort of like Marines, regular Marines I mean, not Space Marines, and going down onto other planets. When I do the rest of the squad I'm going to be a bit more careful with the white. I think I'll paint another colour under it to try and make it work a bit smoother, because you can see some places where it is a bit rough on the guard. To talk about the AdMech for a second, that lightning bolt transfer on their knee pad is actually a spare one from a Stormcast sheet I had lying around. As you might have seen before, I don't really bother with decals on my Stormcast, because most of mine come from Mortal Realms magazine, which doesn't really provide any. But seeing how they've made my Ultras look a lot nicer, I might go for some in the future. For example, if I get around to doing a squad of Sequitors, I should have enough to decorate them nicely. I'm also quite pleased with how the red and white cloth turned out on the engine seer. I think it was certainly a good idea to try and go with that normal colour scheme rather than spending a long time trying to think of my own thing. It certainly makes the model very recognisable as an engine seer. Also this month I did this tank. It has the same problem with shininess that the other decaled things have, but like I say, I'm going to get a matte varnish at some point. Other than that, I'm quite pleased with it. The weathering bits turned out really nice, especially around the hatch on the roof, and I think the gunner turned out nice as well, even though he's cut off on this turntable footage. I didn't buy this one first hand, this was part of a job lot of second hand stuff I bought, so there are some weird things going on with the construction, like how the door on the back is backwards, and the shoulder pads of the gunner have been cut in half. I think that's so that the doors on his little hatch could be put up half open like that, but it's a weird choice. Overall though, I think I managed to make the model look quite nice. At some point I should smooth out the lines on the side here though. Of all the freehand stuff on this model, I think they're the only ones that sort of look kinda strange. I did paint the arrow in on the top myself. The one on the original model was a transfer, but I didn't realise. If I had, I would have probably masked it off before I stripped the paint. But, in retrospect, I am quite glad I didn't, because I enjoyed the challenge of painting it back on myself and making it look nice. The second to last thing I have to show off in this video is this Nighthaunt Lord Executioner that I painted this month. I primed this back when I primed the set of Glaive Wraith Stalkers I painted in January, so he was primed blue. Obviously in the future I'm not going to use blue for this, but when I primed them it was like 6 months ago and I thought I was going to do a watery theme. Obviously I never finished that idea. I'm pleased with how the spirits turned out, although they may be a little dark. I was also pleased with how the little cork rock I added worked. I think the base would have looked a little empty without it, although in future I'll probably try to add a bit more detail. I could have used a few smaller bits of cork rather than one big flat one. Maybe in future I'll use some bits of sprue to represent chunks of metal or more bits from other models and things like that. I'm still happy with this metal colour scheme, and I'm certainly going to try more of it, although in future I'll use a more pointed brush for the edge highlighting. I've been having kind of a brush crisis this month actually. I'm not super great at brush care, so I've kind of screwed up a lot of my good hooked tipped brushes. They're only the cheap synthetic ones anyway, but I've looked into some methods for repairing them and I've made some attempts to salvage them, so hopefully I should be able to bring some of them back. I've also started doing the common sense stuff I should have done all along, like changing my painting water after using metal paints and storing my nice brushes horizontally and stuff like that. The last thing I have to show in this video are these scenery pieces. I wasn't sure how to categorize these exactly, so my method I think for scatter terrain like this is that I'll treat them as half a model and I won't round up. So these 5 would only be 2. I think this is fairer honestly, because they took way less time than full figures or even just bigger bits of scenery would. I really like how the Warplock Bronze looks with the Agrex Earthshade on it. It dulls it down in a way I quite like. On some future models I'll probably work some Nihilak Oxide into the recesses to make it look nice and like oxidized. But I didn't want to try it on this eagle's head because I felt like I'd have to do it across the whole thing for it to look right, and I thought that would have kind of been too much. Also, I got some more scatter terrain like this in the newest set of issues of Mortal Realms that I got. So hopefully next month I'll have some more done up like this for that video. Other than that, there's not much else to say about these, so I'll go into the final model count. So overall last month I painted 16 models if I count the scatter terrain as 2. It might be less than last month, but it's still a lot more than I would have done before I started doing this, so I'm still happy with it. I'm gonna try and get the March one of these out before the middle of April, hopefully. Like I said before, I'll try and work on it during the month rather than after, so that I can get it out a bit faster. But anyway, that's all I have this month, so thanks a lot for watching.